Hello guys, I hope you guys are doing good. So this course that we're starting of A2 Economics will be completely held in English and overall we will start from the basics and then we'll move on with our chapters. Now, first thing that you guys need to understand is that A2 Economics is not a piece of cake because there are a lot of diagrams in your syllabus overall, and just remember one thing, that diagrams are your grade maker. If you draw a wrong diagram, or even if the labeling is wrong, the examiner will cross all your answer and you will not get any marks for it. All right, so today is the first class of our A2 Economics English group. So we'll start from the basic paper pattern and we'll move on to the first topic of ours. Now, overall the approach is very simple. You'll get two papers, paper 3 and paper 4. Paper 3 is an MCQ based exam in which you'll be getting 30 MCQs and 1 mark per MCQ, 30 marks paper. Now, how will you practice for this exam? You will get a portal on Nova Academy Global's website where you'll be getting all the notes and all the material. Also, in those notes, there will be a book by the name of P3 Topical. Now, in P3 Topical, there are like thousands of MCQs of different topics. Like, if we combine all of them, there are like thousands of MCQs. What you have to do is you have to attempt all of those MCQs. Once you're done with your topic, your chapter, you'll go to the website, to your portal, and then you'll attempt all the MCQs. There are answers written over there as well. Now, if there is a wrong MCQ and you understand it by the answer that you see in that book, then it's fine. Now, if you still don't understand the answer, what you have to do is you'll send me the picture of that MCQ. You have to send me the correct answer of that MCQ, and then I'll explain it over WhatsApp. Now, this is how you'll take your approach for your P3. Now, remember, P3 is a grade maker. Your grade will be made by your P3. If your P3 is not up to the mark, if you score like 15, 16 marks out of 30, then forget it. Forget that you'll get an A star in your exam. Minimum, you have to score 25 for an A. All right, 24, 25 is the threshold of your exam. So you have to focus on your MCQs a lot because it's a very important paper. Now, students ask me a lot of time that, sir, how many questions from micro, how many questions from macro? There is no fixed rule that that 15 MCQs are going to be from your micro and 15 are coming from your macro. There is no fixed rule from examiner, but usually the weightage goes around like this, 16 to 14 or 15 15, something like that. But there will never be an exam in which all 30 out of 30 MCQs are examined from micro section or from macro section. This is not a case. All right. So you have to practice your MCQ exam from the portal and the P3 topical book that you'll find over there. Moving towards P4. The P4 exam is similar to your P2 that you already gave in your AS. Again, you have section A, B, and C. Section A is a data response section, which is compulsory for you to attempt. It is necessary. You cannot leave it. All right. And it is of 20 marks. As for section B comes from micro, also 20 marks. Section C comes from macro, also 20 marks. And just like AS exam, you'll get two questions in section B and two questions in section C. You have to attempt only one. But in AS, you had two parts in each question, part A of 8 marks, part B of 12 marks. But in paper 4, in your A2 economics, you'll get a complete 20-mark question. There are no parts in this question. There you'll get a complete 20-mark question, which you have to attempt properly. And we will learn about it, inshallah, throughout our exam. Now you have to understand the marking criteria followed by examiner. Again, AO1, AO2, and AO3. AO1 for a 20 marker, not for the data response, it's for a 20 marker. Now, the paper 4 is of 2 hours. How will you allocate your time duration during your exam? You'll give 45 minutes to section B, you'll give 45 minutes to section C, and then 30 minutes to section A. You'll never start your exam by section A. You'll always attempt section A at the end of your exam. You'll start by section B or section C first, then the other one, and then in the end, you'll go towards section A, because You see, in section A, you'll get a data response, right? So if you read the case, you'll recall some things in your mind regarding the question. But in section B and section C, you need to have a fresh mind. You cannot recall things if you forget them. All right, so you have to attempt C or B first, and then you'll move on to section A. Now, how examiner checks your answer for paper 4, section B and C? AO1 is knowledge and understanding. Out of 20 marks, 5 marks are allocated for AO1, that is knowledge and understanding. And 9 marks are allocated for AO2, that is application and analysis. Usually, examiner, when he checks your answer, he combines both of them, like AO1 and AO2, and he'll mark you out of 14. Usually, he does that. But to simplify this number, 5 marks are for knowledge and understanding, and 9 marks are for application and analysis. The remaining 6 marks are for your evaluation, which is checked through these different levels, level 0, level 1, and level 2. Now, let me give you an example. You guys have studied AS economics, right? And you are aware of merit good and demerit good. Now, let's say there is a question that subsidy is the best way to solve the problem of merit good. Discuss the view. Now, what will be my knowledge part? In knowledge, I will explain market failure, I will explain externalities, what merit good is, the diagram of merit good, what subsidy is. Overall, my bookish terminologies and bookish definitions will come in AO1, where I will explain basic terminologies to him and talk about a very descriptive thing, the very basic thing. And I'll tell him these are the definitions and this is what merit good is. All right. So this will be my knowledge and understanding. As for AO2, when examiner is asking you that subsidy is the best way to solve the problem of merit good, you will write the benefits and drawbacks of subsidy in AO2. Individual benefits and individual drawbacks. I'm not comparing subsidy with anything right now. You'll talk about individual benefits. Individual benefits include that this will reduce the cost of production, this will lower the price level, and overall this will increase supply curve in economy and this and that. However, subsidy has its own opportunity cost. It is calculated according to the externality, which cannot be measured properly. Too high subsidy will result in opportunity cost. Too low subsidy will be ineffective, and this and that. I am focusing on individual benefits and drawbacks of subsidy, right? Once I'm done with subsidy part, then I'll move to another policy because I have to compare in evaluation. So I'll write that, however, there is another policy by the name of advertisement. What is advertisement? Explain that. Write benefits of advertisement, write drawbacks of advertisement. Mind me, you are not comparing. You are not comparing anything. You are writing individual benefits and individual drawbacks of advertising. Like advertising will increase demand, will give knowledge to consumers, and overall will attract people towards a particular good. And however it is expensive, it is time consuming, and this and that, etc. Individual benefits and individual drawbacks. Right? Done till AO2. We are done with our AO1 and AO2. Then when we move towards our evaluation, we start comparing both of them. We compare subsidy with advertising. We write the benefits subsidy has over advertising, right? Because I'm comparing things now. And then I will write benefits advertising has over subsidy. Now I'm comparing both of them. In the end, I will give my judgment that yes, subsidy is the best way. Then I have to give a conclusive statement, a judgmental statement that why am I saying this? Why subsidy is the best way to solve the problem of merit good? My judgment. Or I could say advertising is the best way. Why advertising is the best way? I have to give a reason. Or I could say it depends upon the root cause. It depends upon the root cause that why merit good is not being consumed properly. Is the reason lack of knowledge? Go for advertising. If the reason is lack of finance, lack of money, people cannot afford merit good, go for subsidy. So this is a judgmental answer. This is a political answer. The third one is a political statement that I'm giving that it depends upon the problem that we are facing, right? So when you compare both of them, you enter the phase of evaluation. You are not in analysis anymore. What students fail to understand is that they only write benefits here and they forget to write drawbacks, or they start comparing both of these policies in this AO2. Examiner will not check your answer. He will not Market. Mark my words. You have to be very vigilant. You have to be very careful. Do you understand the paper pattern? Do you guys understand the paper pattern? All right. Now let's move towards our very first topic, that is theory of demand. It itself is a very lengthy chapter. It will take quite some time of ours, but it can be tested in your exam. It is, and also in MCQs, it is very important. But before starting theory of demand, we need to understand something that I call game of relationships. Game of relationships. Now, for example, for example, this is me and this is a very good friend of mine. All right. This is a very good friend of mine. If I am going to a certain place, because he's a very good friend of mine, he will follow me there as well. He will come with me. He will come along me. However, if I'm not going to a certain place, he might not go there as well, which means that his arrow will fall as well. Now, do you guys see arrows moving in the same direction or opposite direction? I want you to be responsive. Are the arrows moving in the same direction or opposite direction? Tell me. Arrows are moving in the same direction. It's very basic, because if Hadi is rising, Ahmad will rise as well. So the arrows are moving in the same direction. When arrows move in the same direction, this means that there is a positive or direct relationship between two commodities. If arrows are moving in the same direction, this means that there is a positive or direct relationship between two commodities. All right. No, no, no. Through chat. Through chat. You can don't turn on your mic because I'm recording the class as well. So whenever there is when the arrows are moving in the same direction, this means that there is a positive or direct relationship between two commodities. And whenever there is a positive relationship between two commodities, this means that the curve that we will draw will be an upward sloping curve like this. Will be an upward sloping curve like this. Because let's say if Hadi is here and Ahmad is here, if Hadi is rising from H to H1, Ahmad will rise as well. All right. Why am I telling you this? Because you will find some demand curves in this A2 economics that are upward sloping, which have proven the law of demand wrong, that the law of demand is wrong. There is no negative relation. Students wrote learn things. The problem is that they wrote learn things and they question me that why sir it is going upward sloping. You have to focus on the relationship. It depends upon the relationship between two commodities. All right. Now let's say there is another person. This is me, and there is another person, and we had a huge fight and we hate each other. Now if we hate each other, we will not try to face each other, right? We will not face each other, we will avoid each other. Now if Hadi is going to a certain place, Ali will avoid me and he will not go there. And if Ali is going to a certain place, he will avoid me, I will avoid him, sorry, and I will not go there. Now do you see arrows moving in the same direction or opposite direction? Hurry up. In the opposite direction. Now your arrows are moving in the opposite direction, and whenever arrows move in the opposite direction, this means that there is a negative or inverse relationship between two commodities. And if there is an inverse relationship, your curve will be downward sloping like this. All right. Our whole economics will be based upon the game of relationship, that whether relationship between two commodities is positive or negative. All right. Now, let's move to our first topic, theory of demand. In theory of demand, you learn about utility, the satisfaction. What utility is? Utility is satisfaction. Now, there was this economist by the name of Alfred Marshall. You must have heard his name in AS economics in the concept of Marshall Lerner condition. What did Alfred Marshall say? Alfred Marshall said that utility, which means satisfaction, utility can be measured in numbers. Satisfaction means that whenever I'm consuming something, I'm drinking water, I'm eating food, I'm getting satisfaction, right? So for this, Alfred Marshall said that the utility that you get from consuming goods and services, it can be measured in numbers. Now, the way weight is measured in kgs, grams, liquid is measured in liter, Alfred Marshall introduced an imaginary unit by the name of util and said that if you eat something, you get a certain degree of satisfaction. And to measure that satisfaction, you will measure it in utils. Now, for example, if I drink water, I'll get 50 utils of satisfaction. If I eat biryani, I'll get 100 utils of satisfaction. So Alfred Marshall gave up this theory that you can measure your satisfaction in numbers. And the reason why this approach has numbers involved, the reason why this approach has numbers involved like 50 utils, 60 utils, it is known as cardinalist approach. It is known as cardinalist approach. Cardinalist approach means an approach which has numbers in it. All right. And this theory of rational consumer, or this theory of Alfred Marshall, the utility theory, revolves around one person who is known as rational consumer. Now, everything that we will learn in this chapter will go on towards rational consumer, will revolve around rational consumer, that we're linking it with rational consumer. Now, what is a rational consumer? Rational consumer is the one who aims to maximize his satisfaction given the price he pays. Rational consumer is the one who aims to maximize his satisfaction given the price he pays, which means that he is a person who is trying to get satisfaction out of every single penny he spends. Every single penny. Every single penny he spends, right? By penny, I mean even $0.1 that he spends. So rational consumer is the one who even aims to maximize his satisfaction from every single penny he spends. Now, let me give you an example of a rational consumer. Now, for example, there are two students, student A and student B. They both go to a school, all right? They both go to a school. Now, let's say the school fee is $200. The school fee is $200 for student A and student B. It is $200 for both. All right. Now, let's say they both went on a holiday and they took a leave from school of 15-day leave. They took a 15 days leave from school. Right. For example, you go to a school and the fee is $200 a month and you both take 15 days leave. Let me write your name. This is Mark and this is Devansh, right? So you both went on a leave of 15 days. You came back after 15 days. You go to school and you have to pay the fee now. Now, how much amount will you pay? If you take a 15-day leave, the school fee is $200, keeping in mind that the school was still open. You guys were not going there. So what is the fee that you guys are going to pay? 200, right? Because school was still open, school was still operational. You guys were the one absent. So it is not your school's fault that you are not going there. So let's say Mark is a normal consumer. Mark is a normal human being, normal consumer. And just like he said that, sir, I'll pay $200 even if I was absent. So it is not the school's fault. So he will pay complete $200. Pay complete $200. But let's say Devansh is a rational consumer. Devansh is a rational consumer. All right. What will a rational consumer do? Because rational consumer aims to maximize his satisfaction out of every single penny he spends, rational consumer will tell the school to hold on a second. What is the school fee? $200. How many days are there in a month? 30. How many days did I attended school? 15 days. So this is supposed to be my monthly fees. I will pay only $100. If you accept it, I'll keep on studying. if you don't like my idea, I'm leaving the school, I'm going to somewhere else. Yeah, I'm going somewhere else. So this is a rational consumer who aims to maximize his satisfaction out of every single penny he spends. He wants to get the satisfaction out of each and every dime he spends, right? So Mark is not a rational consumer, but Devansh is a rational consumer, right? Because he is paying only $100, and he is paying for only the service that he gained throughout that those days. Now, another example of rational consumer is that, let's say you guys go to watch a movie in a cinema, all right? You go to watch a movie in a cinema, and what is our objective when we go to watch a movie? Movie starts, movie ends, we leave, right? We are not sitting extra. So an irrational consumer like myself, a normal human being, what will we do is that, let's say there is Mission Impossible playing in cinema. You go at the start of the movie, you see Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise survives in the end. Movie ends, we leave. But what will a rational consumer do? Rational consumer will keep on sitting. He will even watch the credits that come after the movie. Why? Because credits are also part of the movie. The rational consumer has paid for a complete movie, right? So the credits are also part of the movie. Now you'll not play the credits of Avengers after the movie of Mission Impossible. You'll play the credits of Mission Impossible, right? That the Tom Cruise was hung and this and that. Hunt or Hunk, I don't remember his name. So you'll play the credits of Mission Impossible after the movie of Mission Impossible. You'll not play the credits of Avengers. So a rational consumer will keep on sitting, and he will not leave until and unless there is complete brightness in the room, and until and unless someone throws him out of the hall. So this is what rational consumer is, to fulfill each and every single benefit out of each and every single penny you spend. Do you guys understand? Good. Now, there are a few characteristics which make rational consumer a rational consumer. We will talk about the criticism later on because it is the evaluation of a 20 marker. But for now, let's understand what rational consumer is, or who rational consumer is. Now, a rational consumer is a person whose income is fixed. Now, according to the Alfred Marshall approach, rational consumer is the person whose income is always fixed. It does not changes. It remains same throughout. For him, there is no difference in quality of goods, which means that for him, iPhone and Samsung, they are the same, because the main objective is to connect to the world, is to call someone, is to communicate with someone. This is our main objective, right? So for him, there is no difference in quality between iPhone and Samsung. He says that they are both same. The third one is no role of feedback or advertisement. Rational consumer says that if I want to consume something, if I want to go to a restaurant, if I want to buy something, feedback or advertisement does not matter to me. It's my choice. I will buy it if I want to. I will not base my judgment or my action on feedback or advertisement that I see on TV or newspaper and all that, right? The last one is no impulse buying. No impulse buying means a rational consumer, if he goes to a market to buy something, he will only buy that specific good. He will make up his mind at home that I want to go to a market, this specific market. I want to buy this black t-shirt. It should be within the range of $100 to $200. It should be of this quality and it should be of this fitting. I will just buy the t-shirt and go back home. Whereas someone like me, if I go to a marketplace to buy something, just to buy a t-shirt, if I like something else, I'll buy it as well. Now, for example, if I go to a market to buy a t-shirt, right, and I have some money left in my pocket and I see someone selling the belt, right? So I'll think to myself that why should I come back later on and buy the belt? If I'm here, I should buy it. I should not go back home and come back after a month and buy this belt. So I will buy that belt. This is known as impulse buying. A rational consumer will never be impulsive in his buying, and he will only buy the thing that he has made up his mind for. Do you guys understand? Good. Now, what is utility? Like I told you, utility is the satisfaction. The basic meaning is satisfaction. What is total utility? Total utility is the total satisfaction that you get after consuming the total goods and services. What is marginal utility? Marginal utility is the additional utility that you guys get after consuming an additional unit. So the formula of additional utility is change in total utility over change in number of units consumed, right? So this is the formula that you guys need to learn. Change in total utility over change in number of units consumed. Now in utility, you'll find a concept, you'll find a law that is known as law of diminishing marginal utility. Law of diminishing marginal utility. Now you guys tell me one thing. It's a very sunny day. It's very hot outside. I come back home, right, sweating, and I see that there's a juice in my fridge. I drink that juice, all right? So the satisfaction from that box of juice, I could say that will be at the maximum. The satisfaction from that particular box of juice will be at maximum. Now, once I'm done with one box of juice, if I drink another one, will the satisfaction level rise? Will it stay the same or will it fall? Answer me. It will fall. It's very logical. Why? Because the satisfaction from the second box of juice cannot reach the level of the satisfaction of the first box of juice. It cannot match that level because it was very hot. And once I came home, I was very thirsty. I drank that box of juice, and you see that it really took me to another dimension because it was so satisfying and it was so good that my satisfaction level was at the maximum level at that stage. But the second box of juice can never match that satisfaction level that I got from the first box, right? So this is what law of diminishing marginal utility is. Law of diminishing marginal utility says that if you start to consume goods and services again and again, the same goods and services on repeat, your marginal utility will tend to fall. So there is a negative relationship between the quantity consumed and marginal utility. All right. Now let's understand this through a table. Now, for example, this is your quantity, this is your marginal utility, and this is your total utility. Now, let's take this example. Now, for example, it was a very sunny day. You were outside. Mark was outside and he could not drink anything. So the quantity consumed is zero. His satisfaction level is zero. His total utility is zero. Then as soon as he reached home, he drank the first juice box, the chilled juice box that was there. So he get, let's say, 50 utils from that juice box. So 50 plus 0, the total utility is 50 right now. He said that this is not enough. I have to drink another one. He drank another one and he got, let's say, 40 utils. The 50 plus 40, 90. He drank another one. His utility will keep on falling, will keep on diminishing. 30 utils, 120 utils. All right. Now, for the sake of, just I want to drink another one, this and that, he drank another one in which he got 0 utils. It was something like just, I want to drink it, but I'm not getting any satisfaction out of it. 0 utils, 0 plus 120, 120. Now, he was a bit selfish and he said that I do not want my brothers and sisters to drink this juice box. So this is the last remaining box that if I drink it, juice will be finished in my home. So my brothers and sisters will not be able to drink the juice. So what he did, he drank another juice. He drank the fifth box of juice, which was too much for him, and he puked. All right, he got sick. So instead of getting satisfaction, he got sick. So now his total utility is 100. Now, this concept of minus 20, this minus 20 concept is known as disutility. This minus 20 concept is known as disutility. All right. When something is not working out in your favor and instead of benefiting you, it is creating a cost for you, this is known as disutility. Now, let's draw the diagrams individually first, and then we will show this diagram in a derivation. We will draw connected curves. All right. This is your MU and this is your quantity. My marginal utility started from the first unit. As you can see for yourself, my marginal utility started from the first unit and it was 50. All right. And then it kept on diminishing and it even went into negative. So this is my MU. All right. This is my MU. And my MU is 0 on fourth unit. Everything clear with the MU diagram? Now this is my maximum point at MU. MU max. Everything clear? As for TU, let's draw TU. TU quantity. My total utility is first increasing at an increasing rate. Now you can see for yourself that it went from 0 to 50 like a bullet. It is increasing at an increasing rate. Then yes, it is increasing, but at a decreasing rate. It is increasing, but at a decreasing rate, which makes it a bit elastic. This was inelastic and this was elastic. Now this makes it a bit elastic. Then it is constant. It is constant and then it falls. Then it falls. So this is your TU. But this is not how you're going to draw this curve. You'll draw a freehand sketch like this. This is increasing rate, decreasing rate, constant, and then it falls. This is how you'll draw your TU diagram. Everything clear? Right. So I have a question for you guys. At which quantity level is my TU at its maximum? At which quantity level is my TU at its maximum? Three? Wrong. Now listen to me. The TU is maximum at your level 4. Why is that? There are two conditions that are here. The first one is that you see your total wherever it starts to fall. The point where it starts to fall is your maximum point. Now your total is going to fall from the fourth unit, right? The total is going to fall from the fourth unit from 120 to 100. So this makes it your maximum point. The first rule. The second rule is wherever your marginal is zero, wherever your marginal is zero, your total will be at its maximum. Now, this is the rule that you have to learn for your complete A2 economics journey, that wherever marginal is zero, your total will be maximum. Now, if I say that my marginal revenue is zero, my total revenue will be maximum. If I say my marginal cost is zero, my total cost will be maximum. If I say my marginal product is zero, my total product will be maximum. Now, if I say my marginal utility is zero, my total utility will be maximum. So at this stage, your MU is zero as well. So once your MU is zero, your TU will be maximum as well. Everything clear? Everything clear? Now let's draw a derivative diagram in which you have to connect both of these curves together. In which you have to connect both of these curves together. Acha beta, I'm going to use a term fatwa. You know what fatwa is? Fatwa is like an Islamic rule, a ruling. Let me explain you this. When the imams sit together and they want to bring out a new rule that is implemented on all the Muslims around the world, it is known as fatwa. So this is the fatwa of A2 economics. Now this is how I teach in Urdu as well. I use the term fatwa, that this rule will never change. This is implemented on you guys now, that you have to learn wherever your marginal is zero, your total will be maximum. All right. You guys live in Gulf as well, so I think you are aware of the fatwa concept. Are you aware of it? It is like an Islamic law or rule that is going to be followed and implemented on all the Muslims around the globe. Right. So this is fatwa. A2 economics fatwa. It will not change. I'll be giving you fatwa again and again and again throughout this journey, right? So you'll have to run a lot of fatwas in A2. Now, this is your MU, this is your quantity, this is your TU, and this is your quantity. All right. Now, the same graph that we drew earlier on, I will link them together. All right. I'm not going to do anything extra. I will just link both of them together. Now, this is the first unit of yours, the first unit, and this is the 50 util mark. This is the first point, and it keeps on falling like this, right? MU. The point where your MU was 0, it is the fourth unit. Now, the number that is 1 here, it will be 1 here as well. The number which is 4 above, it will be 4 above as here as well. So this is 1 and this is number 4. All right, this is number 4. Now, this is your marking, the point where you have to make your total utility fall. Now, your total utility is rising at an increasing rate, then at a decreasing rate, then it becomes constant, and then it falls. All right. So this is how this is how you will draw your TU curve. You will draw your TU curve where you have to see that a point where your MU is 0, a point where your MU is 0, your total utility will fall like this: increasing rate, decreasing rate, constant, and then fall. This is how you'll draw your TU curve. Now we have to mark the maximum points. This is the maximum point for your MU. A is equals to MU max. MU max. And the point where your marginal is 0, your total will be maximum. And this is the point, the fourth unit, point B. This is the point where your TU is at its maximum. Everything clear? I'm showing you the theory. Just go ahead and read this theory. Now, there is another way the examiner can test this diagram. You will not draw the diagram that I'm drawing right now in your P4 exam, but yeah, it can be tested in your P3, in which he will draw the diagram and ask you which diagram is it. So in this diagram, he will not show the derivation. Instead, he will draw both MU and TU in the same area. This is MU and TU, and this is quantity. Now, this is your MU curve. This is your MU curve. All right. This is the fourth unit, right? So he will start TU from here like this. He'll go same curve like this, upward sloping, increasing rate, decreasing rate, constant, and then fall. So as soon as it reaches its fourth unit, the total utility will start to fall. So this is the maximum point of MU and this is the maximum point of TU. So this is also one of the ways you can draw the diagram, but it is not recommended to draw in your P4. Draw this one only. If you see this diagram in your P3, you have to understand that this is related to your utility approach. Everything clear? Just go through this page and let me know once you're done.